Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Home Coffee Brewing with April. This time I'm in Copenhagen, and we're going to go up and we're going to meet Franco. That's going to show us how he's brewing with the April Plastic Brewer.
Welcome.
Awesome. So we're on the inside, and it's about to brew some coffee, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm quite excited. What are we going to do? Like, what's the first step here?
So we are going to brew some rum Sudan from Prolog.
Yep.
It's Omni coffee, works both for espresso and filter.
Okay.
So it's the first time I heard about that. So I was okay.
That's the thing now. Okay.
Let's give it a try.
Yeah. Do you know what that is? Like the concept of Omni?
I know what it is. I don't know how, like, what's the difference in the process, let's say, like the back end of the the roasting, I guess.
Yeah, so it's an interesting one because we don't. Some people use it, other people don't use it. At April, for example, we don't. Yeah. What it comes down to is pretty much that you take one batch of roasted coffee, and you say that you can brew this both as filter and espresso.
Yeah.
Obviously, all coffee can be brewed as filter and espresso if you want to. The question is, does all coffee taste good being brewed as filter and espresso, right? That's an open conversation, right? So varietal here, as you mentioned, Sudan Rume or Rume Sudan, which they've written it out now, which is interesting. Comes from a farm in El Salvador. Called Los Pirineos, very famous farm. Yep. Gilberto, the kind of former very famous manager of the farm, sadly passed away not too long ago. But his kids are now running it, and they keep on doing some of the best coffee in El Salvador. Right? So natural process as well. Super cool. I always look at the tasting notes. Where are we? Passion fruit, black tea, and lemongrass. Yeah. Sounds interesting. Do you care about the tasting notes when you buy a coffee?
I try, yes. Yeah, because of course I think we all have like a certain profile that we look for. Yep. But then at the end, I'm also trying to always taste different notes. I like them dark, but then it's sometimes nice to feel like the passion fruit or the fruity ones. Yep. I'm not sure if I'm not the kind of person I will always buy the same blend. I rather taste different ones. Yep. I don't know, for me it's also like the same with wine, for instance. I'm not the person, some kind of people go and buy always the same wine. Sometimes entirely different. Same with coffee. I have the ones I like, and then time to time I challenge myself with something different.
Sure. Would you say that this is like a challenge, or this is something that you're familiar with Central American coffee?
No, I'm familiar with it. Cool. Mostly with that.
That's really cool. And the roastery here as well, for those of you that don't know, so Prolog, which is local Copenhagen roastery, right? So, and really nice. They've been around for quite some time, and it's definitely one of the more, let's say, prevalent roasteries in the city. And you happen to live
the shop
pretty
is
close to them, right? So
less than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's always like a stop by and get some coffee or even sit there. Mostly now when spring is starting to blossom, and if you can get some sun there, it's a cozy spot.
Highly recommended if you're in Copenhagen. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're gonna obviously brew it, right? And I'm a little bit like, so now you got this coffee. Let's say it's a new coffee, you're trying it. You said you actually tried this did you taste it at the coffee festival?
Yeah. I tried a few of them. I think both Prolog and La Cabra were the kind of roaster that I like the most, or at least what they were offering.
Yeah, cool.
And Prolog, besides that, the service or the gentleman was like brewing, took the time to explain everything. So I was like, okay, this is what I like. Yeah. And those like lemongrass and black tea is something that caught my attention, because usually for me black tea and coffee were like in different roads.
Yeah, sure.
And then when I started seeing, black tea, and then you taste it, I was like, makes sense. Okay. So it was somehow funky, but also made sense. So I was like, okay, I want to give it a try.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Because this is like both the varietal and like the coffee in general it's a little bit of, let's say, a rare coffee or a more unusual coffee. Yeah. So when you get a coffee you haven't really brewed before, what's the game plan? Are you going to change anything, or are you just going to do you have a go-to recipe you're going to
I will use the same recipe.
The same recipe?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
It's mostly because for me, it's my way to measure it.
Yep.
because then if I get different beans and then I pour more water or less, then I'm not sure if it was the bean or the coffee or the water.
Yeah.
So I will grind it the same. I will usually use like spoons or more than grams.
Yeah, sure.
So I know how much it is and the water, and then that's how I can, for me, taste the different profiles in that sense.
Cool. So I mean, let's get started, right?
Sure.
Kind of walk us through how you're doing it.
Yeah.
And we'll see what's coming up.
This one here.
The server and the water.
Yes.
What's the water? So
It's filter.
Brita water filter.
Yeah.
Is it tap water or is it something else?
No, it's tap water and then filter. I don't put like the tap water right away from the tap. I think
Which I think in Copenhagen.
No need to discuss the hardness of the.
No, exactly. Like Copenhagen and water is not a thing, right? And I think it's fair to say that in most cities, in most countries, there are some exceptions, but in general, you want to filter the water or work with something other than tap water to make the most out of the coffee, right?
Totally. I think it really affects the taste and the flavor at the end if this is not filtered.
Have you tried like different versions of filters, or is like Brita what you got and you always kind of use that?
No, I tried like filter, and I think once I tried with bottled water, but I'm in that sense I'm a bit geeky and I have some hardness strips to measure. So I was okay if I try and check how hard is the water. Like this one was in a good like average. Okay. So I was like, that's work.
Awesome.
And also at the end with the kettles and everything, when the water is not filtered and it's super hard, everything starts to be ruined. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, here in Copenhagen, the water is so bad that your equipment will actually be ruined after a while, right? Yeah. So just unnecessary, right? No. What are we doing in terms of temperatures and all of this?
We aim to 96. Yeah. Okay. A bit less than 100. Yeah. To not
So basically, you kind of just boil it up and go for it.
Yeah. Like a bit before boiling it. And then the way I do it is usually between 17 or 20 grams, and then 300 of water.
Yeah. Okay.
Classic.
Yeah, let's do it, right? Yeah. I'm really curious.
And then I grind it here.
Yeah. We have to show this. You have to hold that up and show that into the camera. So this is basically a
pretty basic.
Yeah. Budum. I want to say they do French press as well. Isn't it? Like
they do most of. They do French press and they do the siphon also. That is quite funky. Yep.
Is that like is that their coffee grinder? Like, is it a designated coffee grinder?
Yeah. Awesome. I think so. Maybe they have like a more like precise one. Yeah. But for me also works, and I think it's also how you get used to it. Yeah. I know like how coarse or fine I want it and how to grind it. Yeah. So, sure. Like then when I don't know, it's also for me hard to say when you have the ones that like the big ones that you can adjust. So if it's for filter, they have like the pre-setups, and then I know it's a bit cocky, but it's like I want to adjust my level and not just like the preset. Yeah. So I try to do it in okay. It looks the way I think it should look.
Sure. Which I think makes sense, right? And I never use this grinder. I mean, I need to just show these guys what we're talking about, right? Because it's not often you see, this is more of like a blade. So, I mean, there's different, obviously different styles of grinders, right? And in theory, what this would do is that it would give you a little bit more of a, let's say, we would call it wider range of particle size, right? Yeah. Which in the world of grinding, we talk about uniformity in grinding, which doesn't exist. Like there's always a range of grind size, right? So what you look at is the average micron, and that tells you something about something, right? And then this kind of grinder you don't see so much, right? But that makes it even more interesting to try, right?
Yeah. So you go try it. I usually put it right away here, so then I can like
easy.
Put it away. So we're on 420.
And now you're actually using a scale, because you said before, like you're often just doing a scoop, right?
Because I know how much the scoop will bring. So if the scoop is like full will be around 17, 18. This will be a bit less than 17 probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
But almost exactly. Yeah. So basically the scoop measurement is almost exactly what you want it for it. And I think that's an important thing to consider also, right, when it comes to equipment and everything, right? You know, it's at the same time, you know, a volume measurement actually works really well also, right?
Totally.
Which I think people sometimes forget. Cool, you pop it in, go for it.
Should it not?
What's the reason for let's say the shaking?
The shaking
part.
Because when the blaze put the coffee on the side, then some coffee sticks on the on the walls. So to balance it a bit more and
cool. And is it that, you know, let's say the more you do it, the more, let's say, uniform, because you see there's
if you keep doing it, it goes like finer and finer.
Okay. So how long do you normally do it?
I usually do like 3 seconds and check again.
Okay.
And then when it's like.
And then you decide just like visually now it looks nice.
Sometimes it's like a bit more coarse, but then that's why I also shake it to get some beans from the bottom to the top, and
sure.
It's a bit of, I don't know if it works, but for me,
I mean, I think, you know, in the comfort of your own home, whatever is tasty, right?
Exactly.
I mean, I think one of the advantages with home brewing is that you're brewing coffee for yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
And now you're brewing coffee for me, but you know, in general, that's what you do, right? So if you like it, then you like it, and there's no reason for why you can't make this tasty.
No.
And I think a lot of you know, we have which, you know, I'm also, let's say, an equipment geek in the sense that I like to have fancy, you know, equipment when I do stuff. But it's also, you know, we have to be honest with the fact that you can actually make really tasty coffee with stuff that doesn't cost a fortune, right? So
and whatever you have in hand, at least at the end, coffee, it's quite related to your senses.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And what you like to smell or taste. So as we talk at some point, like, maybe with the same coffee and the same equipment, we'll brew it differently because, or at least at home.
Yeah.
And I think that's mainly the difference between a home brewing and a shop.
Yeah.
I think you experiment more when you're at home, and you can maybe take some risks that you wouldn't in the shop.
Yeah. I mean, no one will judge you for your home. I mean, we're going to judge you for your home brew now, though. But
yes, exactly.
When you're in the store, you do, you know, a lot of people consider the you know, the guests, you brew a coffee that other people like, because in the end, they're actually paying you to make the coffee, totally. Right? To be fair, at April, we're more brewing the coffee that we like, and then we're thankful when people like it. But I think, again, with the whole thing with home brewing is that it's really about, is this a coffee you like?
Yeah.
If you like it, then that's perfect, right? Yeah. Then there's always room for improvements, but it's, you know, that's the same for when we, you know, let's say we're competing or whatever we do, there's always room to make it better. Right?
Yeah. But then, it's so personal. And it's a bit what you say, right? Like in April, you brew the coffee the way you guys like it. And then the people that goes to the shop is because they also like that way.
Sure.
So it's like, okay, this is what we do and what we like, what we offer. Yeah. And that's how you like gather your crowd, let's say.
Yeah. So one thing I want to ask, because we've seen this a lot in these videos now, where we have a lot of homebrewers, they get to a point where the better they get at brewing at home, the less likely they are to go to your local coffee shop. Are you one of those that would like say, no, I'm brewing pretty good coffee at home, so I don't need to go to a coffee shop? Or do you still like enjoy the experience of going to a coffee shop?
Both. I think also at some point, maybe expectations are different.
Yeah.
So sometimes I go to a coffee shop to have a good coffee and maybe read a book or chill and have like see people and different. But then it gets harder and harder, right? And in different topics, the better you are at something or the more knowledge you get, it's harder then to settle for less.
Yeah.
So maybe now I wouldn't take a coffee from 7-Eleven. But then I'm not going to stop going for a coffee because I can do also good coffee at home.
Yeah, I heard.
Maybe Sunday mornings I'm lazy and I will do some coffee here at home and stay, and then sometimes I like, you know what? I grab a book, go to a coffee shop around the corner.
Which I think makes perfect sense, right? I'm also one of those that actually really enjoy still going to coffee shops, kind of, right? Even though I have my own. Okay, so the water is
getting there.
Okay, cool. Awesome. One thing we haven't mentioned, obviously you have an April brewer. That's also why we're here.
Yep.
You have the plastic April brewer specifically. Is that a choice behind that, or is that just do you like the color, or what's
No, it was mostly. I know there is also the glass one and the ceramic ones, but I think the plastic also is more convenient. I was always curious how, like, we discussed with the design and the process behind, and the color I love it. It got some back to the 50s, 60s style. Yeah. And it's super pop. And for me, one of the things I always mention is like how convenient it is. I have like different pour overs and different machines, and for me this one is the easy go and simple. And I don't know, if I want to clean the Chemex, then I have to remove this and clean it inside, and it's a whole process.
It's more of a process. Right?
Yeah. And this one, well, the Viality as well, you have to like turn it away.
Yeah, sure.
And this one for me was always easy, convenient, and good looking. At the end, design also plays a good part in coffee machines, and I was always intrigued in when you read the stories behind some machines and how many of them are built by designers or engineers, and
definitely,
and how like the design plays a big part. For me, like the siphon even is like something that you are like.
The siphon looks amazing.
Yeah.
It doesn't always taste amazing, but it looks amazing. Right? So it's I think it's always a combination of the two, right? If it doesn't taste good, it's a little bit irrelevant, right? Yeah. But at the same time, if it's just pretty, it doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah. No, exactly.
For sure.
Then again, if you have a siphon at your place, how many times will you?
I mean, good question, right? Good question.
Yeah. So we just put some water in the filter to make it a bit more.
Go for it.
Yeah.
And you always rinse it before you brew?
Yeah. It's something at the beginning I didn't used to do it, and then I also have an AeroPress, and I was told that you better need to water the filter.
Sure.
And then when I asked the why behind, it was also I know that affect the taste a bit.
Yeah.
And then it's one of the things that becomes a habit, right?
No, for sure. I mean, there's many different conversations to be had around rinsing filters, and we tend to talk about them a lot here. I think it's one, depending on the material of the brewer. Yeah. You want it to be a little bit more stable in terms of temperature, like ceramic, for example. If you heat it up a bit, it's not going to absorb as much. Plastic, of course, you don't really have that same issue. But it's still, I would argue, from a consistency perspective, I think it just makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I still would do it, for example.
Yeah. One of the things that once you start doing it, like, that's it, right?
Yeah, sure.
That makes sense.
Cool, and now we're dumping that in, and now you're at 19 grams-ish.
Yeah.
Very much, yeah, cool.
Yeah. And then I always like try to balance it a bit.
Not sure if so you're like leveling out the coffee bit? Yeah, sure.
Makes that's something that another habit that I took from the espresso brewing. Yeah. When you tamp it and want to have it even.
Yeah, sure.
Does it work for this? I don't know. But
I think it depends on who you ask. Yeah. I think, for example, like a reference from, let's say, the world of coffee competitions.
Yes.
When a competitor goes up and they do not level out the coffee filter, most of the times, also in the brewing competition, that would be a negative.
Okay.
So the judge would actually look for you to do it, right?
That makes sense.
Also like a consistency pitch.
Yeah. There we go a bit. Just let it set a bit.
Yeah. So like first pour, just basically covering a little bit of the coffee. Yeah. And then you don't really have a timer right now.
No, so I'm going to put it now. Yeah. Okay. The first one I do it like this just to get soak, and then I.
Okay, and then you start it afterwards. Yeah. Okay. Are you looking for any specific cue when you start that pour, or is it a feeling, or is it a visual, or?
It's a bit more like the foam. When the foam comes up. Mm-hmm. When I see that the coffee is like foaming a bit, then I know it got already.
Okay, so more of like a traditional kind of blooming phase where you kind of let that coffee go out. Yeah. And you were up at about, let's say, 45, 50 grams in that first pour, and now then you pour basically 100 grams more? Okay. Yeah.
So I wait like 20 seconds more or less, also to settle a bit.
Okay. Yeah. And are you looking for something time-wise now in terms of your next pour?
I try to aim at 3 minutes.
Okay. For total brew time or for?
Total.
Yeah, okay. So at 50 seconds now from the timer, you're going to do another pour. Yeah. And then you go up to around 215, to around 200-ish. So it's almost like 100-ish.
Yeah.
For sure.
Like not like 100, but in different.
But there's still home brewing here, right?
Yeah.
When you're competing, you have a judge standing like this, right? And they.
Really?
Yeah, they look at the time of the pour, the motion of the pour, obviously the volume of the pour, and that should be within 1 gram plus minus each pour.
Makes sense.
So they're very kind of hardcore with that.
And there we go.
Cool. So at 130, you're doing ish. At 130, you're doing that last pour. Almost a little bit more. And then now for that last pour, you kind of poured more in the center.
Yeah.
Okay.
To get it.
What's the main reason for that? Because you started them with like two.
So first, I start with circles to make it all over, and then the center, so it gets like a cone effect and drip it in again.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I try to do it not too fast because, of course, if I do it too fast, it's going to be a bit more acidic.
That's okay. Acidic. Yeah. Okay. Cool. A little bit more acidic, maybe a bit lighter in the character. I kind of take it you like a little bit more of a stronger cup of coffee.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
Sure.
I know. I always try to. For me, the smell of the coffee, is that thing of. And the strong coffee is what drives me.
It gives you a little bit more, let's say, character. I get that. Yeah, sure. But you're still, for someone that then, let's say, prefers, let's say, a stronger cup of coffee, you're still working with a roastery that has quite light roasted coffee.
Yeah. But it's also part of the discovery of what else is there.
Okay, yeah.
I was trying before with some Swedish coffee. I think Swedish coffee is a bit more powerful.
Yeah, sure.
I think also it's a taste thing, right? I think the taste in Sweden is a bit more bold, more hardcore.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
that's true.
And then, it's almost there. Let's bring some cups down.
Yeah, okay. So.
I will use this one just to
tap away. And then at 312, 313, you're kind of lifting it off. Okay. Yeah. And you're lifting it off even if there's a little bit of water still.
Yeah, because then I usually leave it to set in another cup, and then I mix it. Yeah.
Okay, so you actually mix it.
If I'm alone, like now for this will have like half each, but if it's only me, then I will worry back. Okay. Because it's like the last roast, and then I will enjoy later.
Yeah. So we're not wasting anything here.
No. We're not wasting coffee.
It can also be interesting for the people that if you haven't tried it before, it's kind of interesting to sometimes taste the different parts of the brew.
Yeah.
So if you have, let's say here we have like 3-4 mugs, then you can do that first pour, let that go through in one mug, then lift it over to a second mug. Do that second pour, and then you can actually taste the different pours, right? That's something that we kind of do when we're trying to figure out how to adjust recipes and stuff like that, right? So, the you kind of then doing it's about 19 grams of coffee ish to 300 grams of water, more or less, poured in 3 times in 100 grams. So it sounds a little bit like an April recipe in a way. Is that where it comes from, or is that something you've been?
Well, for me, it's like
testing yourself.
As I learned to do it with you guys and the espresso at work. For me, it was always 17.5. But it was 17.5. Yeah. So that's what I got it. And that's how I learned it. It's hard to break those habits and then go back to a different recipe.
Fair enough.
It's where I feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it's how your taste buds also start feeling comfortable. So.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. So just to kind of revisit, tasting notes are passion fruit, black tea, and lemongrass. Lemongrass is a flavor note that often comes together with Sudan Rume as a varietal, pretty much. So more or less an Ethiopian landrace hybrid varietal, this, right? So you should have, that's also why you have that black tea kind of florality to it. So it's like a varietal specific flavor in a way, right? Quite unusual to see this varietal in El Salvador. Quite usual to see it in, for example, in Colombia.
Okay.
That's kind of where you see most of it. But I'm always very curious if you actually get the flavor notes that is on the back. What do you think it smells like?
For me, the challenge for me is like once that you read it, for me, my mind starts thinking about that. So I still get the black tea.
Black tea, sure. I think black tea I can sign
also?
off on as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the second thing?
Earthy.
Earthy, a little bit earthy. True. Which I guess kind of works with a black tea, you know, oolong. Yeah. Almost pour tea, almost like a little bit like fermented black tea, maybe. Yeah. Don't get so much passion fruit.
No,
not to criticize, but there's not so much passion fruit in there.
But then again, for me,
maybe like a little bit spicy
at the end.
To it.
Yeah. But then again, the passion fruit. Also, I don't really expect to be like a passion fruit, like hardcore.
Sure,
like
it's still coffee, right? So if someone says passion fruit and it tastes exactly like passion fruit, that's rare, right? Yeah. And I think that goes with most. Like this, it's a conversation to be had in the whole coffee industry at the moment, where I think some people really want coffee to be able to taste in a way that coffee is maybe not able to taste. Yeah. And then you do certain things to make that happen that one can discuss whether or not that should be done or not, right? Yeah. I really like it. Like for me, coffee doesn't have to taste exactly like a flavor note. It's more the essence. Like it's still coffee, right? In that sense, right? Which I don't think we should forget.
No, and for me, it's always important that I have those kind of earthy or bold flavors to remember. Okay, it's a plant, right? And it's coming from a bean and it's coming from a fruit. So I think when you drink it, you also need to keep that in mind. Yeah, that is not just like the instant coffee that smells like chemical.
Yeah, sure.
So a good coffee needs to remember that it's a natural product.
Yeah. Have you tried this coffee in their store? No. Just because you live so close now? Because that would be really interesting. Yeah. I think in general it's quite I like the texture of the brew. Yeah. Like I think it's like you say you like heavy coffee, but this is not. It's not too heavy. Yeah. It's a little bit heavy in the sense that I think the roasting is maybe
it's
a
more
little
powerful.
Bit, yeah, exactly. I can see that it's roasted on the 15th of February. Yeah. Which actually means it should be pretty well roasted. No, I think it shouldn't really be an issue. Oh.
It's until I think May.
Yeah, exactly.
Then again, for me, it's always hard to adjust when I'm brewing for more people. Ah, okay. Because I'm always used to brew for me.
Yeah. Is this like a one-person brew or is this two?
No, this is more like a bit extra.
What would you do when you're by yourself? Like how much coffee?
I will put, in this one, we put like almost 20. I will put more like 17. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to double up.
No.
But
will you still pour the same amount of water, or would you pour less?
No, maybe a bit less to it more.
A little bit less.
Concentrated.
Okay. Yeah, because you want it a bit stronger.
Yeah.
So you brewed it a bit weaker because I think.
No.
You try to adapt here.
Yes. No, it's like, okay, I need to adapt to... Yeah. I need to bring a bit more coffee to the table to...
Yeah, for sure. Which I think makes perfect sense.
It's always a... And I usually use this one when I brew for myself. Like if I have people over, I will...
use a Chemex, use something a little bit bigger, maybe. Yeah, which makes sense. Like, we always recommend, which makes us a little bit, let's say, unique in that sense, where we prefer smaller brews. Or I prefer smaller brews because they taste better, I think, and they're more consistent from brew to brew as well, pretty much. So I think that makes perfect sense, right? Or you get more April brewers, and then you can do more brews at the same time.
It's easier to control as well. And then again, if I'm alone, I will brew it directly to the cup.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Which is also really
I have my second cup there.
Yeah. This cools. I think to be fair, as this cools down, it has a little bit more of the tropical fruit sensation. Like I can get like I get some kind of tropical fruit to it, which I think makes sense.
Yeah.
So there is a bit of vibrancy in it. Yeah, sure.
It settles a bit.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that could be very interesting for you, and I recommend a lot of homebrewers to do this in general, especially when you have a roastery so close, is that next time you go there, ask also for some water. Bring a bottle and go, could you just fill this up with your brewing water? Yeah. And then you can also try that same water to see if there is a big difference.
True.
I think here, obviously, this water will be a little bit harder than what maybe we would use, but it's still also tasting fine.
Yeah, totally.
It's like a pretty good setup.
Then again, I guess the big shops use like more industrial filters.
Yeah. So in Copenhagen, there would be a full reverse osmosis for sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
I always remember when you told me that depending where you have your shop in the city, depending the water source.
Yeah.
And
No, for sure, yeah, different water pipes, and that's
crazy.
Because I mean, pipes gives minerals to water, right? And here in Copenhagen, there is a lot of. We're also in a pretty oldish building here, kind of. So that's also going to affect, and we're in a different part of the city from, let's say, where the April stores are. So that's going to be quite different, right? Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Cool. Let's do. I want to do a little bit of a summary here, so people kind of see. So, April Brewer Plastic Green. You kind of chose that because of the color. You like the color, and plastic is kind of convenient and easy, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't break so easy, right?
No.
You have the Bodum grinder, which is like their designated coffee grinder, which I never tried before. I would say tasting this, it actually does a pretty fine job, I think. What do you? Can I ask what you paid for that? Just as a
it was a birthday from my dad, for a birthday present.
Okay.
But I think they're around maybe like 30 euros.
Yeah, 30 is like 200. Yeah, 30 euros. Yeah, and I think it's from that perspective, value for money, because there is. I just want to bring it up because you have in the world of grinders in general, but when it comes to hand grinders, for example, which a lot of home brewers use, you have some really cheap, like quite cheap ones, like Prolog and some other ones. They cost in the same price range, and I think this would be just as good. Yeah, just like for reference, definitely. And then Wilfa Kettle, which I've never seen actually, which is kind of cool. So like a pouring kettle, which is cool. I would definitely, from like an upgrade perspective, you could look at one of the Wilfa grinders.
The one that.
Yeah, but not you don't have to go, because they have a few different models.
Yeah.
And the one I always recommend is their cheaper one, which costs about 40 euros. Okay. And it's like quite great. It's like a lot of value for money. I still use it from time to time. And it's kind of cool. So I quite like it. But I mean, it seems to be a really nice kettle, actually. I appreciate that. Then you have a Brita filter, water, which is always makes sense. The scale I haven't seen before. No, is this like a kitchen scale kind of vibe thing?
Both, kitchen scale, timer, and awesome. Easy. Yeah.
You have everything you need, right? Like, I'm not sure. Do you know what you paid for it?
Same, 20 euros.
Yeah, 20 euros. So most people in the industry would use a scale that costs about 200 euros. Yeah. And I think it's important to note that they do the same thing, right? Like this was actually very responsive. I saw you have a timer as well. You pay 20 euros, someone else paid 200 euros for the same function, and then you can kind of wonder, where should you put your money, right? So it seems like a really nice setup, actually, which I quite appreciate, right? Standard 19 to 300 kind of pour, so a little bit more extraction, which is good. Came out tasting really, I think, nice, well-textured brew for sure. Couldn't quite get the flavor notes on the back, but it's life sometimes. You don't always need them. It's like a solid cup of coffee. I would, if someone served me this somewhere, I would be like, okay, nice, that's fine.
Yeah, and at the end, for me, like with the scale and the recipe, like maybe on the daily basis, I will skip it. I know that the spoon, what we discussed before, right? Like the spoon is too much, and the water, and
would you also with the water skip the scale?
Because I more or less know how. Like when you get.
I hear you. Yeah, sure.
When you get used to it, it's like okay.
Yeah, it's a feeling. I get that. Yeah.
But then again, I think about. It's like a mood thing. If I'm like wake up, let's enjoy and put the craft on, full on. If it's let's have a coffee and leave. Maybe I will wing it a bit. Yeah. Of course, it affects the flavors and it's not always the same. Yeah. But I think it goes back also to the expectations of the coffee.
Sure, definitely. Still though, I think it's in the end the result is a really, really tasty cup of coffee, and it makes a lot of sense. And it's always cool to see like a slightly different setup from the other videos as well. It's some good inspiration for all of you. And I think with that, it's kind of a good time to wrap it up a little bit. And as always, thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. Pleasure.
Always nice to come. And thank you to all of you for watching. This channel is growing, which we're really thankful of. That means we can do more of these videos moving forward as well. As always, we want you to comment. We want you to share how are you brewing your home. Is someone using a similar grinder, similar setup, for example? Do you have any recommendations? Then you're more than welcome to just share it. Make sure you subscribe, do all of that. Patreon is where you get all the kind of behind the scenes stuff. And in general, just thank you for watching and have a good day. Thank you again.
See you soon.
Super. We want to give a special thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. It's because of you that we are able to continue to make these videos. And we want you all to feel free to always come with suggestions and ideas on the content that you want to see, because we are doing this for you and because of you. Thank you from all of us here at April.